everyone, welcome to a new deep dive. Think for a moment about Old England. What comes to your mind? Maybe kings, queens, castles.
That's a good start. And today we're looking at, well, a very famous queen from that time, Elizabeth I.
Elizabeth I, right?
Yeah, she was actually the first woman to rule England all by herself. And that was, a really big deal back then, a huge challenge.
Exactly, a big challenge. And it wasn't always easy for her, I imagine. We've got some interesting sources, we can call them, that help us see how she showed everyone she was strong, that she should be queen. So today we're going to look closely at her pictures, her portraits, and sort of figure out what they really meant.
That's right. These pictures weren't just, nice decorations. They were a way for the queen to project her power, to show it to everyone in England.
Okay, and this was a pretty special time in England too, wasn't it? Often called the Golden Age.
It was, yes. A lot of exciting things happened. You had writers like Shakespeare becoming really famous.
Shakespeare.
Yeah. And England started exploring more, sending ships out to new parts of the world. It was a time of, expansion and confidence.
And you can even see signs of this change in the buildings. I think our sources mentioned a big house, Hardwick Hall.
Yes, exactly. Hardwick Hall, famous for having lots and lots of glass windows.
Which was unusual then.
Very unusual and very expensive. So it showed that England, or at least some people in England, were becoming quite rich and, modern for the time.
Okay, so let's dive into the challenges. Being a queen was already unusual, but a woman queen, that must have been incredibly difficult.
Oh, absolutely. You have to remember, at that time, many people just didn't think a woman could be a strong leader. Seriously.
Right, they probably thought women were too weak or emotional.
Exactly, that kind of thinking. People worried, could she make tough decisions? Could she lead an army? And they worried that other countries might see England as weak and try to attack because it was ruled by a woman.
So how did Elizabeth fight back against that idea? This was where the portraits come in, I guess.
Precisely. Because she couldn't meet everyone, how she looked in pictures became incredibly important. These portraits were carefully planned, really, designed to show her strength, her authority, her right to be on the throne.
And it's interesting, they didn't have photos back then, obviously, so these weren't painted from life all the time. You mentioned that.
No, not usually. What happened was the government would approve official patterns or designs for her portraits.
Okay, like a template.
Sort of, yeah. And then painters would make copies of these approved portraits. And those copies would be sent out all across England to castles, town halls, important people's houses. It was kind of like an early form of mass media, showing everyone the official image of their queen.
Wow. So these pictures really had a job to do. What kind of things did the artists include to, show her power?
Well, several things. One really obvious one was the color. Look at her clothes in the portraits. Lots of bright, rich colors. Gold, red, deep blues.
Stuff that normal people wouldn't wear. Right.
Definitely not. Those colors instantly said royal, important, wealthy.
Makes sense. What else? Were there hidden messages?
Yes, lots of symbols. Symbols are basically pictures or objects that stand for a bigger idea.
Okay.
So in her portraits, you'd find things like specific flowers or jewels or animals. And these weren't just decoration. They might symbolize her power or her purity as a woman ruler, or the idea that God had chosen her to be queen.
So it's like a visual code. People back then would have understood what these things meant.
Exactly. They'd know how to read the portrait, and even the tiny details like the embroidery on her dresses or the furniture in the background. It was all incredibly detailed.
And that detail showed.
Well, it showed off the skill of the English artists, for one thing. But it also just added to the overall impression of richness, quality, and power. Everything about her image had to look magnificent.
Right. Okay, let's look at a few specific examples. The first one we have is the coronation portrait. She looks quite young here.
Yes, she was about 26 when she became queen, and this portrait was made around that time. It was a really important image right at the start of her reign.
And people would have seen this one a lot.
Oh, yes. Our sources say this particular image, or versions of it, was used on things like coins and official seals, the stamps used on important documents. So yeah, this face would have been everywhere.
And the details here. That gold dress really stands out.
It does. Gold obviously means wealth. royalty. And she's wearing white fur trim that's ermine.
Ermine.
Yes, it's the type of weasel fur, basically. But it was strictly reserved for royalty and the highest nobility. It symbolized purity and high status.
Okay.
And you also see red and white quite a lot in her early portraits. Those were the colors of her family, the Tudors, so it connects her to her father and grandfather, the kings before her.
So it's like saying, I belong here, I come from a line of rulers.
Right.
Makes sense. And isn't there something she's holding, like a ball, a globe?
Yes, the orb and scepter are symbols of monarchy. The orb is like a globe with a cross on top. This was a really powerful symbol.
How's that?
It represented her being a Christian ruler with authority over the world, or at least her part of it. It linked her power directly to God and religion, which was hugely important back then.
Okay, moving on. Next up is the Armada portrait. This one sounds dramatic.
Yeah.
Armada.
That was the Spanish, right?
That's the one. This portrait commemorates or celebrates a huge event, England's victory over the Spanish Armada in 1588. Spain sent this massive fleet of ships to invade England, and England managed to defeat them. It was a huge deal.
Wow. So this portrait shows her as a protector.
Absolutely. It shows her as a strong, triumphant queen who defended her country against a major threat. It really boosted her image as a powerful leader.
And the symbols in this one, I think I see pearls, and there's a sea in the background.
Yes, pearls were a favorite of Elizabeth's, often symbolizing purity, virginity, but also linking to the moon and the sea, maybe suggesting command over the waters where the battle happened. And behind her, you see two scenes of the sea.
Oh, yeah. One side shows the Spanish ships in stormy weather, looking defeated. The other side shows calm seas and English ships. The message is pretty clear. Under her rule, England defeated the storm. You also often see columns in this portrait symbolizing stability and strength.
Very powerful imagery. Okay, and the last one we have highlighted is the rainbow portrait. This one looks quite different.
It does. This was painted much later in her reign when she was actually around 70 years old. But look at her face. She still looks quite young and strong, doesn't she?
Yeah, she doesn't look 70 at all.
Exactly. And the main symbol here is the rainbow she's holding. And there's a Latin motto on the painting. Non sine solaris.
Which means?
No rainbow without the sun.
Ah, so she is the sun, and the rainbow is peace.
That's the idea. Peace and prosperity, the rainbow only come because of her power and rule. Like the sun brings a rainbow after a storm. It's a message of stability after potential troubles.
That's clever. And what's that on her dress? Are those eyes and ears?
They are. Eyes and ears embroidered all over her sleeve and bodice. The meaning that she sees and hears everything happening in her kingdom. She's watchful, knowledgeable.
Huh, kind of intimidating, like she's always watching. And I see a snake too. And more pearls.
Yep. The snake, often seen coiled on her sleeve, usually symbolized wisdom. And the pearls, again, purity. So even as an older woman, the portrait emphasizes her wisdom, her purity, her watchfulness, and her power to bring peace. Still very much in control.
Now, there's a really interesting backstory to why she might have wanted to look younger in these later portraits. Something called the mask of youth.
Yes, that's a fascinating aspect. You see, back in 1562, when she was still relatively young, about 29, Elizabeth got really sick with smallpox.
Oh, wow. That was dangerous back then.
Very dangerous. She survived, but it apparently left scars on her face.
And that was a problem. Because a queen needed to look perfect.
Pretty much, yes. There was this strong idea that a monarch's physical appearance reflected their fitness to rule, their divine favor even. Beauty equaled power, in a way. So having visible scars wasn't ideal for her image.
So what did she do?
Well, she started using quite a lot of white makeup, a mix of white lead and vinegar, apparently, called ceruse, to cover the scars and create a pale, smooth complexion.
White lead. That doesn't sound very healthy.
It really wasn't, but it created the desired look. And it seems she became quite sensitive about her appearance as she got older. Our sources even mention she might have banned mirrors from her private rooms later in life.
Really? Because she didn't want to see herself aging?
That's the story, yes. She didn't want to confront her own aging. And this desire to appear youthful and unchanging was definitely reflected in the official portraits. They stopped showing her aging naturally.
So the portraits became less about how she really looked and more about this timeless, powerful image.
Exactly. They became part of this mask of youth. The idea was to present an image of continuity, strength, and almost ageless authority. Any painting that showed her looking too old or, well, unflattering was meant to be found and destroyed.
Wow. Controlling the image that tightly.
And we have a quote from Elizabeth herself that sort of sums up how she wanted to be seen, maybe. She said something like, "I see my people as my subjects, and they are my children."
That's quite a statement.
Sure.
Strong, but also caring.
Yes, it shows that balance she aimed for, perhaps. The strong ruler, the mother figure to her nation,
Yeah.
all while carefully managing that powerful, youthful image through her portraits.
It really shows how important image and, well, public relations were, even hundreds of years ago.
Absolutely. Image was power. Okay, so to recap, we've taken a deep dive into how Queen Elizabeth I, way back in history, was, well, a total expert at visual communication. A master of PR, basically.
You could definitely say that.
She carefully built her image through painted portraits, making sure every single detail communicated power, legitimacy, and authority. And it's kind of amazing how that mirrors what we often do today when we're shaping our online identities through the photos we decide to share.
What's really fascinating is just realizing that this fundamental human desire to craft an image, to communicate something specific about ourselves through what others see, seems to be a constant throughout history.
Yeah. Only the tools and the context have changed, right? From oil paints and ermine fur to iPhones and filters.
Exactly. The technology changes, but maybe the underlying impulse doesn't so much.